By way of introduction to some of the laws of the night of the Seder, we have a mitzvah say, L'saper b'nisim v'niflo senasu lavosenu, to convey and to educate our people with regard to the miracles that transpired for our ancestors in Mitzrayim. And this mitzvah begins with the night of the 15th of Nisan, which is derived from the Pasuk Bavur Zeh. And even Chachamim, who are great scholars, are still obligated in this mitzvah of Sipri Tzis Mitzrayim, and Kol Amarich Harezim Meshubach. If he goes into great detail and extends the mitzvah of Sipur, then that's great. Gets Shevach for that. Tzarech lo diel lebanov, he's got to notify his children. And if they ask the question, that's great. If they don't ask the question, then we still have a mitzvah of Vigada to Lebincha. We do strange things on this night, and the hope is that the children will be observing them, and they'll ask questions. That's what we want to. The whole night is about a pedagogical experience. So the best way of teaching is if there are questions and answers. If he has no son to ask him questions, then ishto shola. So he has no wife, then his friend could ask him. And if no one's there to ask him, he'll ask himself. And he'll ask the Manishtana. Manishtana is a statement that in which ways is this night different than the other nights, and we enumerate the mitzvahs hayom. The Rambam says that all of this is called Haggadah. And my Rebbe Rav Soloveitchik was wondering, why did the Rambam call it Haggadah? He could have just said Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is how he opens these halachas. But the word Haggadah, V'sagid L'bnei Yisrael, is indicative of Talmud Torah. Tonight, the night of the 15th of Nisan, is a night of the study of Torah. And in fact, the mitzvah is to read a parsha in the Torah and interpret it based on Torah Sheba'al Peh. And that's the parsha of Harami Ovid Avi, the parsha of Mikra Bikurim. And once again, my Rebbe used to say that just like in Mikra Bikurim, we tell the story of Mitzrayim, of the Geula of Mitzrayim, leading up to our ability to enter into the land, plant and harvest the crop and bring it to the Beis Hamikdash as Bikurim, and we recite Hakaras Hatov and its expression of thanksgiving. So too on the night of Pesach, we're going to read those same psukim that form the very essence of Mikra Bikurim as a fulfillment of Hakaras Hatov, to remember and to give thanks to Hashem for all that He did. Let's talk about the mitzvah of Haseba. The Mishnah begins Arei Psachim by saying Afilu Ani B'Yisrael lo yochal ad sheyesev. Okay, fine. We know Haseba is a requirement, but when? Itmar, we learned matzah tzarech Haseba. When you eat the kizayis matzah, you need a seba. Morar ain't tzarech Haseba. Haseba is derech cherus, and it's not appropriate to morar. Mora is Zechel Yavdus, Vayimaru, Chayim, etc. Now we get to the 4 cups of wine. So they require a seba. Yayin. So the Gemara quotes 2 Lishonos in the name of Rav Nachman. And according to the first Lishna, it's the first 2 kosos that need Haseba. According to the second list, it's the second 2 kosos that need required. So the Gemara explains, what's the argument here? Well, what's the tzad to say it's the first 2 kosos require Seba? What's the tzad to say the second 2 kosos? So the first 2 kosos is Hashta hu dekamaskal cheres. This is the moment in which cheres began, the process of redemption began. However, by the time we get to the last 2 kosos, we've already finish with the Haggadah. We've already mentioned the Geula Mitzrayim. And now you're going to go back and you're going to recline during the drinking of the second set of kosos. It's already my haba. It's already too late. We've already finished the entire Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. However, there's another text, an alternative, that says dafka the second two kosos require a seba, because the Yetziah Mitzrayim, or at least the Geula Me'avdus, was at midnight. So the closer we get to midnight, the better. And therefore, the second set of kosos are more appropriate for a seba than the first two kosos. Because at the time of the first two kosos, at that early hour, we were still avodim. We didn't go out until close to midnight. And the Gemara's final conclusion is, as to which of these two sets of kosos we should be doing a seba, the first two or the second two, is therefore idi ve'idi bo as seba. We require a seba in all four. And who's potter from a seba? Prakton. Prakton is an individual who is lying flat on his back. Very dangerous to drink while you're flat on your back. That's not a seba. Not only that, the Gemara goes beyond that. It has sebas yamin. If he would recline on his right side, lo shmei seba. And the Gemara says this is a very dangerous proposition, to lean on your right side. And that's called Shemayakdim Kon elevation. So again, we're not going to go into the biology here, but in terms of the structure of the windpipe and the esophagus, there's a part of the windpipe that is protected from the esophagus. It's kind of like a little bit of a window that opens and closes. And the structure anatomically of the body is such that if he leans on his right side, then what might happen is that food will enter into the windpipe. And that's very dangerous. Then the Gemara tells us that Isha Eitzel Baila Lo Baya Seba, a married woman in the presence of her husband does not require a Seba. However, V'im Isha Chashubehi Tzricha Seba. Now let's take a look at the Rush. And if you're with me, it's on page 299. And the Rush first addresses the question, what happens if he failed to do a seba? And he writes, Im ochal below a seba yachzor v'yochal beseba. He's required to redo the achila. But what about, that's for matzah. What about dalid kosos? We had a suffix where it's the first two kosos required. The second two, we said, l'chumra you do Haseba on all four. And he writes, the kos rishon v'sheni, regarding the first set of the first two kosos, im lo shasa b'seba yachzor v'yishta b'seba. We're going to tell him to redo the mitzvah of Haseba. Get it right this time. But chos shlishi revi, now we have another problem, and that's called nira kimosif ala kosos. So if he hasn't eaten his Suda yet, then he's not adding kosos, he's just enjoying more wine. But if he finished his entire Suda, and now he wants to add extra kosos, it's nira kimosov ala kosos, right? What does that mean? We're talking about like baltosif. We don't add to the mitzvah. We don't add 5 tzitzios. And likewise, we don't add 5 cups of wine. If he drinks the wine within the context of post-Seuda, then this wine is not in any way enhancing his Suda. Why is he drinking wine now? And the answer is because he's demonstrating as if one second. As if he wants to add kosos. You might say, well, that's a noble kind of gesture. You want, instead of 4 cups, make it 5. No. The halacha was established, and 4 kosos and no more. So therefore, if at the end of his Suda, he starts drinking kosos, it seems to the spectator that he's drinking extra kosos. And that's baltosif. That's called nira kimosov ala kosos.
So he's saying, so the Rosh is saying that he's going to be making another bracha.
I don't think he's saying that. I think he's saying that let bygones be bygones. He drank the last 2 kosos. He failed to do a seba. That's it. It's fafalin. It's gone. Nothing you can do.
But there's no isser of having a drink all through the Seder, right?
Well, yeah, we're talking after the Seder. In other words, he's already benched. Now he's drinking the 3rd or the 4th kos. And now all of a sudden he takes out a bottle of wine and he pours himself another kos. That's already nira kimosov ala kosos. It's not the wine that you drink within the context of a Suda. And it looks to the spectator that he's adding extra wine for the mitzvah of Daled kosos.
So
Miu ikola neimar. Kemen sheshasa shelo kitikuno. Now the Rosh backtracks, and he wants to offer a logical possibility that he could add, in event that he didn't do a seba on 3rd or 4th kos, he could add a replacement kos with a seba. And why? It's not kimosov ala kosos. Why not? Because kemen sheshasa shelo kitikuno, since he didn't drink the daled kosos the way he was supposed to, meaning baseba, whatever kos he drank without a seba, that's not part of the minyan. So therefore, it's clear to everyone that he's just replacing the original number. He's within the framework of 4 kosos, and therefore it's not kimosov ala kosos. See, there used to be a way I could do that, but now I don't. Oh. So in other words, he's not adding to the number of kosos. He's within the number 4 of chiyuv, but since he didn't drink one of those kosos, we'll call it kos number 3, for argument's sake. He didn't drink it kehilchasa. He's now replacing it, but now he's replacing it with a kos shel chova, meaning it's one of the 4 kosos. So that's called a kos shel chova, and it's within the framework of 4 kosos. Now we get to your question, Joe, about bori pri agofen. Shasa kos revi below as seba. He wants to replace the 4th kos with a 5th because the 4th was not a proper kos. He drank it without a seba. So the Rosh says that first he has to recite bori pri agofen, and only then will he be allowed to drink the 4th kos, which is really the 5th, but Al Pidin it's the 4th because he wasn't Yotzei with the other kos, it was without his saber. Now, keep in mind that all this is mitzad sofek, because we don't even know if he needs a saber on the second two koses. Sharei kishashasa kos revi below a saber below nizkel asiv heisiach daito lishtos yoser. So initially, when he made the bar pri agafen, he had in mind that he would fulfill the mitzvah, and that would be the end of the story. So he didn't have in mind that he would replace it with another kos. And in Birchas Hanenim, we need to avoid what's called Hesech Hadas, where Hesech Hadas breaks up the continuity between the bracha and the achila. Anyway, how much wine does he have to drink? He says Kidei Revius. Okay, we'll see later on how much is Kidei Revius. And now we go through some general halachas about the Leil HaSeder. Number one, Yesh Shulchanu Aruch Mibojom. We're in a big rush to drink the kosos, and therefore make sure, even when it's day out, to prepare everything for the Seder. The idea is that as soon as it gets dark, he comes back from shul, and we go right to the Seder. So there shouldn't be any preparations that are omitted, so that we can get to this miyad, that we can immediately, urgently begin the Seder. Now, there's so many different preparations for the Seder. I mean, take, for example, people will recline on pillows. People will wear a gartel, not a gartel, I mean a
Kittel.
A kittel, right? A kittel. And you might want to have a wide choice of wines to offer people different wines, as we'll soon see. All these preparations should be organized before the Seder. Again, you don't have to set the table with plates and smaller plates and silverware. We don't need all of that. That you can bring out later on. But what we need to start the Seder are the basics. You need a kara, and if you're a kittel, as we said before, and you have to have the wine available. All this should be on the table already during the light hours, when it's not yet dark, so that when it's dark, he could go ahead and immediately start the Seder. And all this has to do with, as we'll see in the next line, Kadesh lo yishnu atinokos. We're really in a rush because we want to keep the children awake, and we should put them to sleep during the day. The afim hu beis medrash yakum. Even when he's sitting and learning in the beis medrash, he should get up and not delay. If they should mitzvah l'mayer v'lecho, we should start the Seder as urgently, as soon as possible. Why? Kidei shelo yishnu hatinokos. But when is the earliest time you can start the Seder? Everything's been prepared, hopefully. Everything's on the table. And what kicks off, as we say in football, what kicks off the beginning of the Seder? Kiddush. Kiddush is the first of the Dalit Kosos. And here we get a problem, because normally in another yontif, like Sukkot or Shavuos or any Shabbos, when you make Kiddush, it doesn't have to be dark out. In the summer months, we'll probably make Kiddush much earlier than when it gets dark.
Well, for Sukkot, we need to have it after dark for the first night, right?
So that's going to be a result of what we're learning now. The original is Leil Pesach. Leil Pesach and all the mitzvahs halayla begin with chashecha, when it gets dark out, not before that. So that even if he was makabel on himself Tosefes Yontiv, and it's light out, he cannot perform the mitzvah halayla, the first of which is Kiddush, which is the first of Daled Kosos. He's got to wait until it's dark out. I don't care when he daven Ma'ariv. And this is all based on a pasuk that says, "V'yachlu es habasa b'layla." The korban pesach has to be eaten b'layla. Layla starts with chashecha, and matzah is equated to korban pesach. Al matzos u'rom yochlu. So when it says Bavur Zeh, at the time of the Mikdash, Bavur Zeh means begin the Seder when it's the appropriate time for eating the Korban Pesach. And today that we don't have the Korban Pesach, Bavur Zeh is the time that's appropriate for eating the matzah. And the matzah is equated to the Korban Pesach. Now, the truth of the matter is this is hardly relevant. But there are places on the face of the earth where it gets dark very, very late. And there's a real strong push to want to start the Seder early. Can you imagine if it only gets dark at 10 p.m.? Who would want to start the Seder at 10 p.m.? How are you going to keep the kids awake? But despite all the motivation to start the Seder early, we just can't do so. Kiddush is the first of the Daled Kosos, and all the mitzvah laila require chashecha. And what time does it get dark in Canada? I don't remember anymore. On Leil Pesach. Anybody?
Right now,
What time?
right now it's like 7:45 or something.
It can get a little later in the next 2 weeks, probably, right? So
Probably about 8 o'clock, I guess.
8 o'clock. It's already getting late to start the Seder at 8 o'clock. Now, here in Israel, it'll be more like, I think, 7 o'clock, maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure.
No, it'll be almost the same because we changed the clocks. So
what time?
this Shabbos ends around 7:30. So 10 days later, maybe 7:40, 7:45, something like that.
It's very similar.
So not much different than
Canada.
what Joe was talking.
But keep in mind that 7:45 is after Shabbos. And I would subtract at least a half hour from that for the time that it gets dark, probably. Then he tells you to put out the most beautiful kelim that you possibly can and set up your chair in a way that you can do heseba, as we'll soon see, kederech hacherus, to demonstrate that you were redeemed from slavery. Now, it's very important to lean in the right way. We saw before that if you're on your back, that's not appropriate. And he says, Yatal Smolo, as we discussed earlier, he reclines on the left side. and he should be leaning on something. And that's called in the poskim a mishan. Mishan means to lean on something. It's like, for example, you can't see it now, but unless I pick up the chair. But anyway, this chair has arms. So it's a very good chair for his saber. But many of our chairs don't even have arms. So what are you going to lean on? The Gemara talks about leaning on the knee of your neighbor. I mean, that's not so comfortable. So honestly, I don't know how to solve that problem. My Rebbe Rav Soloveitchik was very makpid about that. He, over and over again, he hacked into our heads. You can't do a Heseba unless you lean on something. Watch this. Is this Heseba? That's not Heseba. Do you follow? Shh. And we saw in the Rush that if you eat without Heseba, you have to eat again. That means that Heseba is critical. Heseba is indispensable. Again, he has a problem with the second set of kosos because of Nira Kamosa, but theoretically, any shtias yayin, kos yayin on Leila Pesach without Heseba must be repeated if there's no problem of Nira Kamosa. So we want to get Heseba right. It's got to be on the left side, and you should be leaning on something.
So you can't basically in your chair just go on a side and just lean against the back. Isn't that enough?
I don't think so. I think your arm has to be leaning on something. You understand? Because you're feeding yourself the wine, hopefully with your right hand, right? While your left hand is leaning on something. You know, the fact that you're going like this, that's already a problem of al gabo. The direction for a Heseba is towards the left. It's not back, and it's not forward, and it's not towards the right. So the fact that his back is leaning on the back of the chair, that's not nishan. Nishan means it holds up his body when the left arm is being supported by something. He needs a support for his left arm where he's doing that Heseba. Isha in Etzricha Heseba and Keni Chashuva. So the Ramah is going to tell us that in our time, the Noshim are Chashuvos. You know, I always say that it's very paradoxical because when we get to Pesach, all of a sudden, Avodim Hayinu. Yeah, we have to make sure that we serve our wives, right? And make sure we clean up their house and we make sure we do everything. You know the famous joke about the cockroach. You know, I think it's going around now too. You know what I'm talking about? The man found a cockroach in the living room, so he cleaned the living room up and down. So the next day, she puts a cockroach in the kitchen. Anyway. Ben Eitzel Aviv. Interesting. What is the relationship between a Ben and his father? On the one hand, it's a relationship of kibud. On the other hand, it's also mora. In the context of mora, which loosely is translated as reverence, Heseba is inappropriate. As we'll see soon, in the case of a Talmud Eitzel Rabo, Eino. Heseba is out of the question. Again, in theory, we'll see Lamaisa in a second, but because of Mora. Yehi Mora Rabcha Kimora Shamayim. And Heseba is antithetical to Mora. Heseba means I'm a big shot. I'm a Ben Chorim. I'm totally independent. I write my own script. I don't have to size up to anybody. And that's antithetical to a relationship between a Rebbe and a Talmud. In the case of a Ben and Eitzel Aviv, you have Kibud, which is more of an Ava relationship, and you have Mora, which is a reverence relationship. So which one sort of trumps which, and the answer is going to be that it's primarily a relationship of Ava, and therefore there will be Heseba in the case of Ben Eitzel of it. But a Talmud Lifnei Rabo ain't tzarich lahasav afilu ein Rabo muvak ela imkein yite lo Rabo rishus. The Gemara paskins that Talmud Chacham shemochal al kvodo mochel. So in the presence of your Rebbe, you have to achieve machila in order to permit you to do a seva. As we saw before in the Rush, now here we have to introduce the Rav Yah. The Rav Yah was one of the Balei Tosfos 1,000 years ago, and he came up with a halachic ruling that completely revolutionizes this whole discussion about Haseba. The Rav Yah says that Bizman hazeh ein derech lahasik. This is not the way we comfortably eat our meals today. Maybe they did it at the time of the Greeks, the ancient Greeks. Maybe they did it at the time of the Gemara, and even at the time of the Amoraim. But today, Haseba is not a demonstration of derech cheres. That's not the way we want to show off cheres. On the contrary, Haseba is uncomfortable. It requires a tircha. So that's it. The Rav Yah does away with Haseba bisman hazeh. The poskim will not accept the Rav Yah, but they will rely on the Rav Yah whenever necessary. And therefore, the Ramah is going to write that bisman hazeh she'ein derech lahasiv. He's quoting the Rav Yah. He says it explicitly. Kidayu Rav Yah l'smoch ala b'di'evid and yotze b'yol haseba. So instead of getting into a situation where we have to drink another cup of wine and another cup of wine, and who knows if he's not getting drunk, and who knows if it's not kimosif, nira kimosif alakosif, avoid that all. Instruct everyone to do Haseba. And very often people forget about Haseba, so you have to instruct them. But b'di'evid, if they drank or ate without Haseba, leave it laz tzuru. Leave it alone. And how can we do that? We can rely on the Rav Yah that bisman hazeh is no Haseba. How much is a kos of yayin? It's a revius. Now, really, in truth, it's a reva revius. What do I mean? A quarter of a lug, because they added 3 parts of water to 1 part of yayin. Yeah, that yayin built in mazug is called yayin chai. So that concentrated wine has to be diluted to make it palatable by adding in a ratio of 3 to 1. So a reva revius becomes now a revius. A revius is 1/4 of a lug. He doesn't tell you exactly how large is 1/4 of a lug. So b'li neder, we'll have to get to that if we can. There's a lot of good stuff coming up here in the Piskei Teshuvos, but on the top of the page here, there might be one more point of importance. Oh, this is an interesting question. This is a machlok between the Ramban and many other Rishonim about a large kos. Our kosos, generally speaking, I think, if I can generalize, are too large for the night of the Seder. But just imagine, you know those like beer, glasses, you know what I'm talking about? You see them in England and other countries, maybe even in Canada and America, I don't know. Very large. They hold many, many revios. And the Ramban Shita is, apparently, that you have to drink rov kos. It's not enough to drink revius. Rov kos means you're going to have to drink most of this gigantic kos. My advice is get yourself a kos that contains 1 revius. 4 ounces, whatever it is, 4.4 ounces, whatever you'll decide for yourselves. Because the Ramban would say that if you have a large kos, you've got to drink rov kos. Now that halacha doesn't apply to a kosher bracha. It's a unique halacha in Leil Pesach of Daled Kosas. So on a normal Shabbos or Yontif, when I make Kiddush or Havdalah, I drink a revius, and that's all I have to drink is a revius. You have a large kos, so pour off a revius, drink a revius, save the wine for next Shabbos. But not on Leil Pesach. According to this Shita, I'm not saying we all agree with it, but that Shita maintains rov kos, which probably means the shtia is not just from the yayin, because that would be enough for revius, but it's a shtias hakos. There are daled kosos, and each kos has its own personality, its own significance. And in order to be mekayim the mitzvah of daled kosos, you've got to drink rov kos of each of the 4 kosos. So I'm not saying we paskin like that, but clearly we are machmir for that. The yesh omrim shetzarich lishtos rov kos afilu machzik kama revios. Now, if a revius is, let's say, 4.4 ounces, kama revios, you're talking about 13 ounces already almost. So that's what I suggest, that you get the right kosos. Now, he doesn't discuss here, I was a little disappointed, what kind of yayin, what the status of grape juice is. Maybe it's here in the pages, and I just didn't get that far. Now, I'm wondering if you got the pages, because I've been reading from the text. Yeah? Bruce, you have the pages? The pages that we sent out.
Yeah, I got them from David.
Right. Well, where do you get them? In the WhatsApp?
Well, he sent it by email. I have
Email.
that.
All right, you could print out from email. It's a cinch. Even I know how to do that.
Yeah, that's not a problem. I just open them on screen.
If you can read it on the screen clearly and it's not too small, then that's fine. No need to waste paper. But I would recommend, if you find it difficult to read it on the screen for any, I can give you a variety of reasons, then the best thing would be to print it out.
Ralph, just going back with regards to seva for a second, and the concept of having to lean on the arm for those of us who are left-handed, how are they, and they don't want to, get everything a total disaster with.
Well, if you're a lefty,
or whatever.
Where are you doing a save, on the left side or on the right side?
Still on the left side.
You still go on the left side. Everybody does on the left side, even a lefty.
But I'm saying, with regards to this concept that the leaning has to be on the arm itself.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I lean to
if you're a lefty and
I
you're
lean to the left, but
so you're holding the cuss in your right hand. That's not comfortable for you.
No, I hold the cuss in my left hand, but my left arm is free. I'm leaning on the back on my left side of my back.
No, but again, if you're leaning on your back, if you're
arm,
leaning on the left side, how are you going to feed yourself the cuss with your left hand? I can't imagine how you do that. Do you follow me? Here I'm a lefty, let's say, right? If I'm a righty, it's fine. I'm drinking like this and I'm leaning on my left. But if I'm a lefty, then I can't lean on my left and feed myself the wine on my left with my left hand. I mean, maybe theoretically you could do such a thing. So that's really a difficult question. But I don't know if he'll discuss this, but I'm pretty sure that even a lefty has same on the left side because the anatomical structure of the esophagus and the windpipe doesn't change whether you're a lefty or a righty. So the problem of health here, that you might, chas v'sholom, end up with wine in your windpipe and forget it. That applies for a lefty and a righty in the same exact way. So a lefty, I think, is still going to have to do a save on his left side.
Yeah, I do know. Again, I'm saying that you're saying that you have to lean on the arm itself. That's
well, maybe you can,
I mean, just wondering if he says it, because again,
maybe
when
Joe,
I
what you
lean,
can do,
I lean
maybe an alternative
on the left side of my back.
Joe, maybe an alternative, can you hear me? Might be that you take a pillow or something that will support you and put it on the left side. Maybe it doesn't have to be the arm of the chair. It's got to be something that holds you up, that you can lean on it. But leaning in the direction that you lean, not going back and not going forward, towards the side that you're leaning. What's holding you up as you lean? What keeps your left arm supported? In yeshivas, we have something called a stender. Do you have such a thing, a stender? Or I don't know, maybe you have another chair. You could take another chair. Are you listening to me? There's a little problem here with the Zoom.
I know, but I'm saying, I know, it's a problem. But what I'm saying is that you're saying that he has to lean, according to this, he has to lean on the arm itself, right? That's what he's saying. He has to lean
let's
on
say
the
back of the chair.
left arm. My situation. Right. So that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is, does he talk about a situation like with regards to a left-handed person?
So, Joe, I don't know.
Lean towards my arm completely free. I'm not leaning on my arm. Does anybody else want to chime in?
It's Joe, there's a problem with the technology here. Maybe the internet here is not so good. So I hear you in and out. You know what I'm saying? In fact, I get a notice here on the board. It says your internet connection is weak. All I'm saying is take another chair, not the chair you're sitting on. Take another chair, turn it around, and lean on the back of that chair. Froze. I would go on.
That's fine, but
all right. If it's fine, then it's fine. If it's fine for you, it's fine for me.
You're really supposed to be lying down.
I wouldn't say lying down. I don't know.
You're really supposed to be lying down. That's lying the way they did it.
Not on your back.
In other words, they used to lie on couch. They used to lie on couches.
Right, but the Heseba has to hold you up in a way that you're not floating in midair. You follow me? So again, you can't lie down on your back.
In other words, but that's on your side. That's if you look at the classic Roman pictures. That's they were lying on a couch and on the left side. And they would eat, like that. That's real Heseba.
But again, what holds up his arm? Is there something holding up his arm? That's what I'm saying. He needs a nish'an.
It's not
not
so
the-
much
No,
his
not his
arm is
arm.
holding.
It's got to be.
It's
what do you
not so
say,
much
Bruce?
that the arm is being. What's happening is that the person is. Oh, he's back. Are you there, Rabbi?
I'm here, but again, we have problems with the
Okay.
with the internet here. I'm here in Midreshet Rachel, and I just gave a shear here, so
What they had what was called, and they're lying horizontal on this couch-like piece of furniture, and it's not per se that their arm is being held up, it's that their arm is on the
again, let me
hand,
cut
their
you
elbow
off
is on
because
the
it's hard
couch,
to hear.
it's holding
I'm
their
just
head up
saying.
because they're laying out prone, they're not sitting up.
Okay, but I'm just saying, if you're sitting on a chair, as we usually do around the Seder table, I don't know in your parts of the world, but in my parts of the world, we usually sit at the Seder table on chairs. When you're doing a Seder, you have to lean on something that's holding up your body. You're not just suspended in midair. You go ahead and solve the problem, figure out how to do that. I suggested one or two things, either an armchair, or alternatively, take another chair or a table or something and lean on the table. You might be able to even go like this. Here's the
The
table.
closest thing in my
You could turn it around, turn your chair around like this and lean on the table. But there's got to be something that holds up your arm. And I've seen people who don't know this, and they just simply hold up their bodies. You know what I mean? That's not good enough. Well, let's go on. He says,
the closest thing would be to lying on your bed nowadays.
I wouldn't recommend lying on a bed at the Seder night. That's not going to be very feasible. And not only that, you might end up in a situation of prakdon. Prakdon means, you're flat. You should be sitting on a chair. Now, he says the following. Should you be doing a seba during the meal, or just during the matzah and the daled kosos, and that's it? And he writes here, which is on page 300, if you have it, number hey, Yesha kosvusha seva b'meshach kol asuda ein el rishus ula mitzvah min hamuvchar. So there is an element of mitzvah min hamuvchar, according to this view, in doing a seva during the course of the meal, when you're eating your knedlach, if you not makpid on gibros. Whatever you're eating, you're eating your fish, hopefully not the zroa from the kara, and you do a seva during the course of the meal. Again, in your case, Rabosa, you don't have an armchair. I wouldn't suggest you do a seva during the meal. I see it's so hard for you to do a seva even during the Dalit Kosos. Oh, Joe dropped out. All right. Maybe he'll come back. So, Bruce, you're the only one who's here, so I'm going to talk to you. Oh, Joe is here.
Well, they had their
See, he
pictures
dropped
off,
out.
but they were
He
here.
went to brush his teeth. Oh, look at that. David is here.
And Bob is here, but he doesn't have his camera on.
Yeah, well, he's driving, so Yudi is I don't know officially. I don't know if he's here. He's not here.
He's on.
His name is
on.
here.
There's no
So
camera.
he threw his name into the. Now, what about
Good
afikomen?
enough.
Should we require afikomen with heseba? So the poskim say, based on the Mishnah Brura, that if it's not too hard for him, again, it's hard. Imagine eating another afikomen because he forgot to do a seba. It's hard enough to eat one afikomen. But the Mishnah Berurah writes that if it's not too difficult for him, he should do another afikomen with Heseba. Get it right this time. If he reminds himself before Birkas Hamazon that he didn't do the Achilas Afikom Veseba, Af Shegomes Achilas Matz Afikomen, Yachzor v'yochal od matzah l'shem afikomen imenu koshelo. But if he already recited Birkas Hamazon, now he's going to have to wash his hands, start a new Suda, eat the afikomen to make up from the first afikomen that he ate without Heseba. That we're not going to require. Yeshe kosev shafilu b'kos gadol shemachzik yosem miravius l'chatchila yishte kol hakos. V'im shasa yayin koshalov. If it's hard for him to drink wine, yikach kos hamachzik revius. V'yishte rov revius. Well, let's say that's about 2 ounces. It's very important for older people, who have problems drinking wine. Ubekos rishon midalid kosos, kos revius midalid kosos, yishte revius shleim. Now, why would he be more machmir on the first and the last kosos? The first kos, I understand, it's a kosher kiddush. So he wants to demonstrate that he's not just fulfilling the mitzvah of kiddush as he does on any other Yom Tov night, any other Shabbos night, but he's fulfilling the mitzvah of shtiyas daled kosas derech cherus, a separate mitzvah. So he wants to demonstrate that by drinking rov kos and not relying on revius. But he writes, Yishter revius shleim. We're not going to force you to drink the entire kos, not even the majority of the kos, but we're going to ask of you to drink a full revius, not a rov revius. Rov revius is fine for a classic kosher bracha, kiddush, havdalah, nisuin, a kosher bris milah, etc., etc. All that fine. Rov of revius is enough. And rov revius is equal to what's called mole lugma, but not on the Leil Pesach. Now he tells you how much is a revius. It's at the bottom of page 300. Do you have the page numbers? No response. Okay, shir revius lefi midos manenu. Lechazanish 150 gram, and Reb Chaim Noah's 86 gram. So how much is 86 gram in ounces? Anybody know? Not getting much of a response today. I'll blame it on Zoom. Okay, now women are obligated in Achilas Matzah like men. How about chametz? Obviously, they're enjoined from eating chametz like men. But what about the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is a mitzvah seishas man grom? And we're going to apply the following principle, that since they're obligated in matzah, therefore they're obligated in Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. Because matzah and Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim go together hand in hand. However, we have a fundamental machlokas whether that's doraisa or derabbanan. The Rambam says that isha ptura Mikol mitzvah seishus man groma chutz mikiddush hayom v'achilas matzah v'achilas pesach. No mention here of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim as an exception to the rule that Isha B'tur Mikol HaMitzvos. So why does the Rambam mention only Achilas Matzah, Kiddush Hayom, Achilas Pet? Why doesn't he mention Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim? Perhaps the Rambam holds that only on a Drabanan level a woman is obligated in Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. But anyway, the assumption is that a woman is obligated in Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim, whether it's Doraisa, Drabanan, fine. That's an issue. And therefore he writes, Yesh l'dagdek she'yishma'u es Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. The women folks should be careful, and the men should also be careful to see to it that the women hear the Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. And therefore there's going to be a mitzvah of chinuch to train a child, whether it's a boy or a girl, to prepare them for the mitzvah of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. And we're going to prepare the women, the girls, because they will be obligated after they become bas mitzvah in the mitzvah of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. Whether it's the Dorais or Rabbanan, I don't know, but they'll certainly be included in the mitzvah of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. Iker chovas habenu lishol es kol hashinuyim al kol hashinuyim shel halayla hazeh. We think that the Ben is straitjacketed and he should ask the 4 questions. That's not so. He should be asking his own questions, lav dafka the 4 kashas. And therefore, we're going to try to do during the course of the night different things that might arouse his curiosity, strange kind of behavior patterns. Like, for example, machzirin akara. We'll take off the kara, we'll put it back on, ochlim karpas. Anyway, this is all meant to awaken the child's curiosity. Lachein, im hayeled eino yodea lish'ol nusach manishtana. Tzrichim li'oro lish'ol al hashinuyim anasim b'layla hazeh. To have a child who's not yet ready for the Daled Kosos, but we try to do things that are odd, and hopefully he'll be curious about them. Now, when we say that Daled Kosos, we're talking about everyone at the table, not just the Balabayas, and we're going to train the children. Maybe we should give them grape juice instead of wine. They're already 6 or 7 years old, and that's higil l'shir chinuch. And then he says that there's an interesting minhag that one should not be pouring his own cup of wine. Somebody else should pour it for him, and that's an expression of derech cherus. All right, now he has a shut, an answer to a question from the Rav Shulchan Aruch. He speaks about something called Chamar Medina. Now, Chamar Medina is not Yayin, and therefore the mitzvah of Daled Kos of Yayin he won't fulfill with Chamar Medina. But on the other hand, he will fulfill the mitzvah of Koshel Bracha, and each one of the 4 Kosos has its own bracha and is a fulfillment of Koshel Bracha, so that he can accomplish with Chamar Medina. So he'll make a shahakal on Chamar Medina, but then he'll add the bracha of, one second, no. He'll recite the bracha of Shakol, I think he says. Yeah, Shahakol. That's on page 301. He writes here, Sipri Yitzis Mitzrayim Belela Pesach Tzarich Lios B'Ofen Sheyargish. He should really feel it's an emotional mitzvah. It's got a kiyum shebelei. V'yargish v'yagishu b'nei beso ki'ilu kol mashem esaper niskayim bo. That he personally underwent all the experience of Yitzias Mitzrayim. Tzarich laharos b'slavus b'gufo b'truosov sheyeh b'simcha u'b'derech cherut. So he's really in charge of setting the tone for all the Bnei Bayis. So if he gets to that state of regesh of hislavus, in which he feels as if now he's going out of Mitzrayim, he can have an impact on those around him and inspire them as well. And the Rama writes, "B'chol dovador chayav adam laharos esatzvo kilu hu biatzmo yotza ato mishibud Mitzrayim." And some have the minhag says that in order to show again, yesh nogim kidei laharos hachova shel liros esatzvo kilu hu shemesaprim l'bnei beisam nisei Hashem shos Hashem Yisrael. I think what he's saying here on the bottom, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that this minhag expresses the view that telling personal stories. I think he may have in mind the Shoah, but you know what? It doesn't have to be that. It could be any ma'ora kosher sha'avra love, and somehow he was saved from it. And that's something that he should tell the people so that they get an idea of a regesh of how it feels to be in such difficult straits, and then God redeems you. So he says, "Ma'oros koshos sha'ovra aleim, Rachmana litzlan, v'nitzolu mehem, v'yetzu me'avdus l'cherus." Okay, Rabbosai, we'll stop here. And on page 302, he goes into more of the details about the second kos and the Berchas Hanenim, Bar Pregofen, and so forth. Okay, then. So let me wish you a
next week we're meeting, and then the following 2 weeks we are not. Is that correct?
Let's try to shoot for next week. I can't promise you officially. This Thursday is the beginning of Bein Hazmanim, when we start with Avodim Ayinu LeFaro, but not Faro, but Anyway, so I'll see if I can get a special license, and it'll be at 3:15 on the Israeli clock. Well, if anybody sees Yudi, just tell him I asked for him and send him my best regards. Okay, then.
Right.
Okay, Rav, try to find a different location if possible for next time. It's
Yeah, well, no, I had to give a shir here. So
maybe it's just another room. Sometimes it's just.
No, this is the best room in the place. I mean, they promised me this room. There was a lot of classes going on here, and this is you take a look at the size of this room here. I mean, I don't know if you could see it. And here's a beautiful picture I could show you of Rav Moshe Feinstein. Can you see that at all? No.
Yeah.
There's a light on it. So it's glaring off the light, so you probably can't even see it. Am I right? No?
Uh-huh. Yeah. associate.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure who's in this picture. I have to find out.
Associate.
Okay, then. So my choices were either to not give the shir, I didn't want to cancel, or to give it here in Midreshet Rachel. So I think most of the shir we were able to do. Okay, then. So everyone should be
Okay.
well. Thank you so much.